shall we get started? I want to thank you all for coming way out to, outreaches of Tokyo. I know it's a very central location, so it's very easy to get to. Anyways, thank you all for coming. My name is Josh from Oxford University Press. So you may have seen our booth downstairs. Please feel free to stop by and ask any questions in between the presentations. You should all have 3 pieces of paper on your chair. One is a brochure for a new series from Oxford called Network. One is the handout for the presentation, and one is this prize draw form, which if you fill out and give to one of the Oxford staff, you will have a chance to win this wonderful bottle of white wine at the end of the presentation. So please.
Quite a good chance.
Yeah, very good chance.
1 in 6 or 7.
So please fill that out and give it to either me or Tatsuya before the end of the presentation. So I'll introduce our presenter for today. His name is Ben Shearon. Shearon. And he is a lecturer at Tohoku University. And he's been in Japan for 12 years teaching all levels from kids to adults. And you are also the educational advisor for the new school at Senior High School. And also Cambridge English in the same day.
Which is not
sure. That's fine. He'll be presenting today on online tools, so I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thank you very much. Right, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, thank you so much for coming to my presentation. I was really worried that I'd be speaking to the empty room today. Good that you're here. And thank you especially because there's so many other presentations going on at the same time. I hope you'll find it useful. I'd also like to thank Oxford University Press for sponsoring me, making it possible for me to come down today. So I am Ben Shearon. I work at the university mainly. I also help at the language school. So I'm going to be using both of those experiences today. I hope that the talk will be relevant to people from those kind of backgrounds. I really like learning languages. I started when I was about 6. I started learning Spanish by immersion, by living in Spain, and I've continued ever since, learning French and German at school, Chinese at university, and Japanese by living in Japan. And looking back, I wish I'd had the resources that students have now. The kind of tools that we've got, the kind of online content that's available, that's just come up in the last 5 years or so is incredible. And I'm going to be talking about how students can use that to make their language learning more interesting, but above all, more effective. Just before we start, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what I'll talk about. That's mainly so that if my talk is not going to be helpful for you, you can move elsewhere if you need to. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what we talk about. I'm going to be talking about online, mostly internet-based tools and content sites. I'm going to talk briefly about online safety, because I think that's a very big concern with teachers and schools. And I'm going to show you how these things all work. My talk today, I'm not going to give you a big list of resources. I could have done. There's so much out there. There's literally thousands of websites that we could be looking at today. But I'm going to talk about the ones that I actually use myself in class. Over and over again, not just as a one-off, but these are the real gems that we're talking about. Today it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get through in time, but we're quite a small group, so if you have a question at any point, please raise your hand and ask away. Feel free to do that. If you look at the handout, this is not in order in any way, it's in alphabetical order. These are the things I'll be talking about. If you're interested in them, please search for them online. It'll be very easy to find them. I'd like to add 2. I'm just going to stick them up here, and please write them down if you like when you have a chance. Those are 2 extra ones that I'll be talking about. resources that have come online, literally, in the last 2 or 3 or 5 years. And I really think this is a revolution in language learning. Probably the biggest revolution ever in language learning. Language learning through the internet is completely different to how it's been ever before. And I think if we can give students the tools to harness that, if we can show them how to use these tools, then it's going to change their experience of learning. I'd like to talk about safety though, first of all, because safety seems to be the big stumbling block. You know, if teachers think, oh, I want to use online resources, then safety will come up, whether it's from the school, or from parents, or from the administration. You know, safety is a concern. But I'm not sure it's a relevant concern, because if you look at students now, children, teenagers, university students, they've grown up online. At my language school, we have children as young as 6 or 7. Most of them have mobile phones already. Right, so to say that a 15-year-old will be in danger because of using English resources on the internet, I think is a bit of a stretch. Having said that, though, I don't recommend just throwing students onto Facebook or other kind of social networking sites without laying the groundwork, at least. I think there's a few things we can do to help maintain student safety. The first one is to control the environment. Make sure that the students are accessing appropriate websites that are appropriate for their age and appropriate for what they're going to be doing. And set ground rules for the students. They should know this already, but like not giving away your name, not telling people where you live, not posting photos, very basic online safety type things. Another thing is to involve parents as well, especially if you're teaching children or teenagers. Letters to parents informing them of what you're going to be doing, explaining the rules, and telling them how their students will be using the internet. I think the biggest danger for Japanese students, especially online, is that they'll be too polite. Basically, operating in English, maybe they're not completely sure of themselves, and they won't have the knowledge to pick up on what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. And I think that's the main danger. So students are in a weak position because of the language, and they're also in a weak position because they're not familiar with the social norms. So I think telling students what is inappropriate behavior and examples of inappropriate behavior is probably the best way to protect them from that kind of. So things like what kind of questions you shouldn't answer online, for example. Right, I'd like to give you a quick quiz. So if you could work in small groups, like groups of 2 or 3 people, and just for a couple of minutes, see if you can explain these terms to each other. I'm going to put on a list of terms. And just see if you know what these are. Okay, so just these 5 things. 6 things.
Is there a pair practice situation going on? I did not hear. No. So are we supposed to be able to identify RSS reading I'm guessing it's RSS. I know what it is. It's to rate the level of a book, the level of difficulty of a book. No. Well, it's a level of reading LMS and a lexicon or something. I think you're different. No, I don't know these.
That's good.
iTunes, yeah. It's warm in here. Sorry, I'm gonna. Sorry. Thank you guys. The light glare from my shirt is going to kill everybody, but I'm too hot. What is
Are you looking these up?
No, it's not.
On Google?
No, but I do.
We're making use of online tools.
RSS piece of software made by Apple.
And I'm downstairs, that's just why I'm bright, representing self-publishing.
Okay, I hope that was enough time for you to get through a little bit.
We're giving away free.
These are all, most of the technology terms that are going to crop up in today's talk. RSS stands for really simple syndication, and it's a way of sharing online. Basically, you subscribe to a website, and anytime new content is posted to the website, you receive it automatically. It's a really easy way to keep up with lots of different websites at the same time. To use it, you'll need a RSS reader program. There are lots available. The one I like to use is Google Reader because it's integrated with Gmail and so on. But this is a great way to follow blogs. So if you find a blog that you like, you can normally subscribe to the RSS feed. And then anytime you open your reader, all the new entries for that blog will be there. So using this, you can keep track of 20 or 30 or 40 different websites without having to keep the websites in your bookmarks. This is great for learners because it's a good way of making their a kind of individualized English newspaper every day in the morning. So they get all their different feeds coming in. SRS stands for Spaced Repetition System. And this is a memory tool. It's actually quite old. People used to do this with flashcards. We call it, so they'd have different piles of flashcards. You'd run the flashcards. If you got them right, you'd put them in one box. If you got them wrong, you'd do them again. And basically, the magic here is the timing. So using research into memory, they've determined that certain timescales are the best way to avoid memory loss. So it looks something like this. So you'll forget something, and then if you see it again within a day or so, you'll get it back. And then each time, you'll remember it for longer. And eventually, you'll remember it forever, if you see it enough times. And the magic about RSS systems is that they do all the hard work for you. You don't have to remember which cards are in which order. You don't have to make the cards. It's all done online on the computer. There's a piece of software that does this called Anki, from the Japanese, or Anki-suru, right? So this is free software. You can download this and make your own decks. However, it's a bit of a pain. You still have to make the flashcards. So SRS is actually integrated into several websites that I'll introduce today. iTunes I'm going to mention because although it's a product, it's free, and I think it's the best way to get podcasts. And also it's the only way to get iTunes University, which is quite important. I'll talk about that later on. LMS is a learner management system, or a learning management system. Basically, it's an online website or software where you can see what your students have done. So you can give them questions, and you can see if they did the questions, if they got them right, and often you can see like how long they took as well. So you can see which questions are difficult, which ones are easy, and so on. Really useful. Probably the most famous one is Moodle. So Moodle you have to install on a server. There are some websites that provide it, but it's quite difficult. I can't figure Moodle out. I'm fairly into technology. So as an alternative to Moodle, there are lots of other LMS systems. Again, they're integrated into websites so that you don't have to worry about them. SNS is a social networking site or social networking service, like Facebook, for example, or Mixi in Japan. And a browser extension is a small piece of software that you put into your browser, like Firefox or Chrome, so you'll find little useful applications that you can put in there. I'm going to mention a really fantastic one later on. Okay, now the main part of the talk, because I'm going to actually show you the websites that I think are the best. Right, let's see if I can get these lights off. Okay, so this is called Popup Dictionary, and this is the best of the Popup Dictionary sites that I've found. Now this is magical for slightly advanced students. So we're talking teenagers, we're talking university students, we're talking adults. And what it does is it allows you to read content on the web easily that maybe you wouldn't have been able to read otherwise. It's not online translation. I think it's better than that. The problem with online translation is that you lose the meaning, right? It changes the meaning. This doesn't. So what this does is it gives you pop-ups. So let's, for example, if we went to an English newspaper website through here, like Google News. Internet connections at the start. Basically what it does is, for each word on the website, if you move your mouse cursor onto it, you'll get a pop-up of the definition. So it will tell you what that word means. What that means is you can read the website normally, and as soon as you get to a word that you don't know, you just move your mouse onto it, and you get the meaning instantly. It saves so much time. And it means that it's quite easy to read text in English or in Japanese for English speakers. This is invaluable for me. I use it all the time.
Great for learning kanji, isn't it? So reading along. Oh, what's that?
The other thing you can do is you can cut and paste text. So my university sends me these emails every day full of kanji that I don't know, and I can just paste them into here. And then you can...
So is it something like Google Translate, but a little bit better?
It's similar to Google Translate, but you get this kind of thing. So instead of translating the text, it just tells you what this one word means, which I think helps because the students are still reading real language. They're just using this as a very, very fast dictionary. Another thing, the third thing this site does, is you can double click on words and it will save them onto a list which you can then email to yourself. So you have to input your email into here. And I get the students to use their phones for this. It's probably more useful. and then you can send yourself that list of words. So you read the article, and immediately you get your study list. So the words that you looked up, what they mean, straight to your phone. So on the way home after class, you can review the words while they're still fresh. Wonderful tool and completely free. Now the beautiful thing about this is that it makes other websites accessible for the students. For example, this is one of the greatest online resources I've ever seen. It's amazing. What it is, it's very, very simple. It's about 1,500 short conversations. They're about 3 or 4 minutes long on all kinds of different topics. And they're between people from different countries. This is the genius. So it's not just Americans or British or Australian accents, but it's people from France, from the Philippines, from China, from Peru, and you really get this huge range of different Englishes. And of course this is important because our students, if they end up using English, and they probably will, they won't be talking to native speakers. They'll be talking to other non-native speakers. And if you've only ever heard standard American English, you just can't understand these other Englishes. So this is amazing practice for them. And as you can, there's over 1,000 talks on here on all sorts of things. So let's have a quick look at this. Some of them are easier than others, of course. So what you've got audio here. And it's quite natural conversational kind of English.
One interesting thing for me is that, over recent years we've had countless incidents where
So you've got all the speech markers, and and very natural speech. You've got the transcript below. For more advanced students, you can turn off the transcript, try and follow it naturally. You've got some quizzes on the side, which are good for students that like doing quizzes. I don't make everyone do it. You can download the audio to an MP3 player and take it with you on the bus. But the thing for me, this is still too hard for my students. Some of them struggle with this. Even reading the transcript, it's not easy. So what you do is you take that URL and you paste it into Popup Dictionary. And if all goes to plan, it'll give you the same pop-up functionality on this page. So you can now listen to the audio and get the pop-ups.
One interesting thing for me is that, over the recent...
And this Popup Dictionary works on most websites. Right, the next thing I'd like to talk about is Google search, which might seem a strange thing to talk about, but there's actually a few functions that I think are really, really useful. The first is, if you go down here to search tools, you look at the search tools, there's a reading level tool. Okay, so you can actually set what kind of, it's quite basic. It's looking at how long the sentences are and things like that, but basic ones will be easier than advanced ones. So if students are searching for certain things, if they select basic, they'll get easier websites coming up.
How do they figure that out? How do they...
They look at the text and they look at how long the sentences are. And
There's some computer that is figuring that out.
Well, Google's already scanned every single page on the internet.
Yeah.
That option is not where? From the menu?
So yeah, if you go to search tools here.
Is it tools?
Yeah, on the so on the normal site, it won't show them. So you have to click here, show search tools, and then you'll get things like time, and what kind of results you want, and you can choose the reading level there. And then you can select what kind of pages you want. The other thing I do with Google search is to use image search. Now, the first thing you need to do when you use image search is to select strict safe search content. If you mistakenly leave off safe search, you have no idea what's going to come up here. None whatsoever. And that's really dangerous, especially if you're teaching children or in a formal setting. One of my colleagues in Sendai managed to plaster pornography all over an elementary school classroom by accident. You know, newspapers, job consequences, horrible. So just be very, very careful with this. Safe search. Select strict, and then you're fine. Nothing, even remotely controversial, can come up.
Does Google remember that setting? Or do
Yes,
you have to
for your
do that
computer,
yourself?
yes.
Okay.
And then, what you can use this for is just to get an impression of the meaning of words. You know, for example, if you chose gecko. Now, I would find it quite difficult to explain what a gecko is, but you can, oh, this is a gecko. Right? So I use this in class all the time. If students say, what's this? You Google it and you can more or less see what it is. And also you can tell them they can use that at home. It's often as quick as using a dictionary, and a lot of time you'll get a better idea of what things are.
Because there's a lot of variety in the
And then, yeah, there's lots of
words.
different pictures, so you can see a range of things as well. It's very, very useful for that. Right, the next one. These are getting progressively more complex, I think. The next one's English Central. Does anyone know this website? This is wonderful. Again, it's a freemium website. So what that means is that they'll give you most of it for free, but if you want everything, you have to pay a monthly subscription. But actually, for me, the free stuff is the best. So you don't have to worry about paying. And basically what this does is they take videos from the internet and they subtitle them, and they let you watch those videos, and you can search for certain vocabulary and get the videos. But the basic functionality is this. So let's have a quick look at how that works. So you'll go on, you'll select a video. And eventually it will play. And the beautiful thing about this is, so you've got Miru, which is watching the videos, and then you've got this kind of vocabulary practice the second time.
Excuse me? Excuse me? Sorry, do you speak English?
No, I don't, sorry.
My car's broken down and I wondered if you could tell me where to find a garage.
Well, you know, that's wasted on me. I don't understand what you're saying.
So this is obviously a comedy sketch, and it's very short. So you can see we've got through most of it, well, about a quarter of it already. And what we can do with these is that you
Speak
can click on these words
English.
and check the meaning. And the nice thing about this site is that they've done this by hand. They haven't just used a computer, so the meaning will always match what's in the video. So it's very, very nice like that.
Well. Understand.
So you've got the Japanese, you've got pronunciation, you've got example sentences. It's a really nice tool for students. So they can watch the video, and then they can go back and check out which words they didn't understand. They can watch it again. They're short enough that, you know, students could watch 2 or 3 of these every day without spending a huge amount of time. Also on the site, you've got vocabulary learning tools, so this kind of SRS model, where they'll give you words spaced at the appropriate times. You can have questions and tests about it. But for me, the videos is the main bit. I say to my students, look, if you watch one video every single day, you know, in a year's time, your English will be on a different level completely. And that's only 3 or 4 minutes every day. The next step up from this is TED, I think. I've been showing this to university students recently, and is anyone familiar with TED? I guess? Yeah, everyone? So, you know the content, but basically there's 2 tools, I think, that students find incredibly useful, that we wouldn't necessarily notice as a native speaker. One is the fact that they do have subtitles in almost every language, and most of them have Japanese now. And the other thing is that you have the interactive transcript. And the interactive transcript, I don't know how they do this, but you can jump to a specific sentence in the video. So you'll play the video.
There are differing accounts of what actually happened that afternoon, but since my sister, brother at all, suddenly Amy...
It's amazing to me that this kind of functionality, the students can watch bits, they can jump to the bits they don't understand, watch them again. They've got the subtitles in Japanese or in English. And I normally say to my students, watch it first with Japanese subtitles, and then once you understand it, go back, watch it again with English subtitles. But the content on here is so good that students will make an effort to break through the English in order to access that content. And not everybody. I mean, my approach with all of these tools is like to say to the students, look, here are some tools. If you like them, please use them. If you don't like them, use something that you do like. That's the key, isn't it? Making sure that they're doing something every day that they enjoy. But the students that like, yeah.
I just want to know what level of English would you feel a student should attain in order to be able to have that be a good recommendation for them?
They should be able to understand
most of it.
Some effort.
So you're talking about strong high school students? Or
oh yeah. I've got 2 junior high school students that use this. But yeah, it's mostly university or adult students I'm using this with. The other ones, the ELO and the English Central, that's suitable for younger learners, so children, especially English Central has lots of kids materials on it as well. And talking about kids, the last 2 things I'd like to show you are children's websites. The first is called Starful. This is an American site, and it's phonics based. It's basically phonics practice. And there's 4 levels. They get progressively harder. The first one is the ABCs. So practicing letter sounds. And each of these will have a short video that practices that sound over and over again. And then the second level, which I think is a bit more user-friendly, is they've got stories, short stories, using phonic sounds that are read out. And the students can click on words, have the words read to them. So this is wonderful for that kind of elementary school age. And after that, once they've mastered the phonics, this website is wonderful. I don't know why they put it up, actually, because it gives you access to most of the Oxford Reading Tree books online with audio, animated. It's just beautiful. So if you, I'll just show you one. So free ebooks here. So if you come up here and find a book, And then you get this thing, so if you go for slightly younger learners. And if you choose ebooks, then you kind of remove the catalogue aspect of it. So these ebooks, read ebook, and you get the book here with sound and everything. And actually, even like very low level university students.
Written by Roderick Hunt and illustrated by Alex Brichter. Can you see my teddy bear? Can you see my dog? Can you...
I mean, you can see it's very nice, high production values, and I wouldn't mind using this with very low level kind of false beginners. You know, even high school students or certain university students would enjoy this, I think. The content's cute, it's nice, it's easy, and they're very scaffolded, they're supported on this. I think this is also wonderful. Right, I'm about to run out of time, so just before we finish, I'd just like to mention a few teacher tools very quickly. One, I mentioned iTunes earlier, and the reason I did that is because iTunes University just opened itself up to individual teachers. And what that means is that you can put your lessons online, and they can be accessed by people all over the world. So if that's interesting, please have a look at the website. It explains it in detail. But that's a really exciting development, I think. Before, only universities could do that. And now it's open to the individual teacher level. Another thing I'd like to talk about very briefly is a site called Picky Friends. Now, this is developed by a teacher in Japan called Jeff Dione. And what it is it's a closed social network that is only for junior high schools or senior high schools. So teachers sign up, and then their students can access this English world. And they've got schools all over the world joining in. You cannot get in if you're not a junior high school or a senior high school. And it's a very safe environment. Everything's visible, and it's wonderful. You know, people use it like Facebook. They share pictures, and they talk to their friends, and they friend each other. And it's a great way to use English in a practical way. And then these two that I mentioned, especially Edu 2.0. So this is a free online LMS, learning management system. So this allows you to set questions for your students and see if they answer them, whether they get them right or wrong. And it's free. So again, please check that out if that sounds interesting to you. And the last two I'm going to talk about are Japanese learning tools. Because for me at least, the biggest problem with Japanese is learning the kanji. And this is the key to doing that, the spaced repetition. So there's two I'd like to point out. One is Renshu, and the other is read the kanji. Both of these use SRS to teach kanji, to practice kanji. So if that's something you want to build on, and I want to, definitely. I use Renshu every morning. I have it pop up on my browser, I do 5 minutes, and then I do something else for the rest of the day. One thing about social media, very quickly. Recently in Japan, I've seen Twitter explode. I've seen Facebook get more and more popular. Mixi seems to be dropping off there. So it's now quite possible for teachers to interact with their students using those media. Personally, I wouldn't do that with a personal account. If I was going to do that, I'd make a teacher account for myself and only use that account with students. I think if you use your personal account, you've got all sorts of issues that are going to pop up here. But basically, having a teacher Twitter is going to help you connect with, especially university students. My university students talk about my class all the time on Twitter. I've actually got something called a Google Alert. This is something Google does where they will send you an email anytime someone mentions a certain phrase that you set. So I put my name as a Google alert, so whenever my students are talking about me on Twitter, I get a little email that says, someone mentioned you here. And most of the time, I'm amused by that. I'm kind of like, oh, okay. But occasionally, they'll misunderstand something, or they'll need, so I can send them a quick tweet and say, oh, actually, the homework is this. Or actually, yes, next week we do have a class. That kind of thing. I find that quite useful. Skype, I think, is a really useful way to give lessons if you have that kind of adult student. So rather than have the adult students come in, you can actually teach classes over Skype. And the last thing, I'd just like to mention this textbook. The point of this is that it's a very easy entry into a lot of these tools. It's got online video and a learning management system, and also activities for students based on using online tools. So it's quite an easy way for teachers to ease into this if they're not comfortable just jumping straight in, as it were. So please have a look at that, and talk to Josh as well afterwards if you're interested. Basically, I really think this is so useful and so practical and so necessary now that I really think teachers have a responsibility to learn about what is available for their students and to pass on that knowledge to students. I think teachers that don't are kind of like doctors that don't learn new procedures. Right? They're just not serving their patients well enough. So it's really important to stay abreast of all these things. I think the key is to using them. Now, if you just say to your students, hey, there's a great website called, English Central, please use it. I've tried this and it doesn't work. The students do not use them. If you're serious about this, you need to show the students in class. You need to have the students sit down and do it, hopefully in class. You need to set homework where you make them do it, preferably more than once, and then maybe 10% or 20% of students will continue. But for me, that's great. That's 10% of students that weren't doing it otherwise. That's a big win for me. So if I can get one student to start using one of these websites, then that's going to make a huge difference to their English career, basically. And for me, that's, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, is this the way you present it in your class, the same way you present it to us?
No,
I'm interested in how you do that.
That's the funny thing, actually, because this is a terrible way to introduce technology. Because I've just done what I just said. I showed you lots of different websites. I put some on the whiteboard. You're going to go home, you'll forget everything.
I'm worried about that.
Except for Mr. Boone, who's got his iPad.
I just followed it all on my iPad.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do this with students, take some time. Pick one that you think is the most appropriate for your students, and just hammer it home. Show them in detail, have them practice it. Set them homework, say, look, I want you to go home and watch 3 videos by next week. I want a list of which videos you watched, and I'll ask you about them. And then do that again a few weeks later. And then maybe, if they like it, and if they find it useful, and if they've been forced to use it a couple of times, so they know how to use it, it might continue. So that's how you do that. In my experience, if you hammer the students, like I've had students continue using ELLO and English Central, and that works quite well.
Do you have computers in your classroom?
I have this kind of setup.
Okay.
There is a computer room that I can take students to occasionally.
But they'll use your laptop in class if you want to give them an experience.
And they also have smartphones as well. A lot of the students now have smartphones. So when you're talking about these websites, they can search and get on them straight away.
That's mostly good. So that works really well most of the time. The problem, a lot of the websites use Flash.
Yeah.
Just smartphones won't. So.
Oxford Owl uses Flash.
Anyway, I think we're out of time, but I will be hanging around here until I'm thrown out. So if you want to come and ask me about anything that we talked about today, or even give me any comments or suggest something that I should put in next time, I'd be very pleased about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.